The moon was full when the Alpha King cast her out. Not hidden behind clouds, not shy or pale. It hung high above the stone towers of Silvercrest Pack, bright, watching, unforgiving. Lyra stood in the center of the outer courtyard, her breath coming out in thin white clouds as winter wind cut through her worn cloak. The ground beneath her bare feet was frozen solid, stone biting into skin already numb from standing too long. She should not have been there. Omegas were never summoned at night, never judged beneath the open moon. Punishments were usually quiet, whispered orders, silent disappearances. But tonight, Alpha King Alaric Moonthorn wanted witnesses. He wanted the pack to remember. "Look at her," a beta muttered from the crowd. Lyra lowered her gaze instinctively, shoulders curling inward. She had learned long ago that eye contact only invited cruelty. Her long dark hair hung loose down her back, hiding the faint silver line at her collarbone, the one she had wrapped and concealed for years. The mark. No one had ever seen it. Not even him. Alpha King Alaric stood on the raised stone steps, his cloak snapping behind him like a living shadow. He was everything a king was meant to be, tall, broad-shouldered, eyes like molten gold, presence heavy enough to silence a crowd without effort. Tonight, he looked at Lyra as if she were nothing more than a stain on his stone. "You were warned," Alaric said, his voice carrying cleanly across the courtyard. "Again and again." Lyra swallowed. "I tried," she whispered. The words barely reached her own ears. Alaric did not ask her to speak louder. "You failed," he continued. "You failed to shift, you failed to contribute, you failed to prove you belong in Silvercrest." Murmurs rippled through the pack. "She's 22. Still wolfless. A burden's." Lyra's fingers curled into her palms, nails biting deep. Pain helped her stay upright. Pain was familiar. "What makes this worse," Alaric went on, "is that you lie." Her head snapped up. "I don't," she said, panic flickering into her voice. "I never." Alaric's eyes hardened. "You hide something," he said coldly. "I have felt it since the day you came of age, a deception, a weakness masked as humility." The moonlight shifted. For a heartbeat, just one, the silver mark beneath Lyra's skin pulsed warmly, responding to the accusation like a living thing. She gasped softly and pressed her hand to her collarbone. "No one noticed. No one except the moon." "I will not have deceit in my pack," Alaric said, "especially not from an Omega who offers nothing in return." The laughter came quickly. Not loud, not cruel in sound, but dismissive. The kind of laughter that erased a person without effort. Lyra felt something crack inside her chest. "Alpha," she whispered, "please, I swear I have never betrayed this pack." Alaric descended one step. Then another. Each step felt like a countdown. "You are a liability," he said, "and Silvercrest does not carry dead weight." He stopped directly in front of her. Up close, his presence was overwhelming. Power pressed against her skin, making it hard to breathe. For a moment, just a flicker, Lyra felt something stir in her chest. Recognition. The mark burned. Alaric frowned slightly, as if sensing something off, something he could not name. Then he dismissed it. "I cast you out," he declared. The words hit like a blade. Gasps tore through the courtyard. "You are no longer under Silvercrest protection," Alaric continued. "Your name will be struck from the pack records. You will leave our territory before dawn." Lyra staggered. The moonlight intensified suddenly, silver pouring down like liquid fire. Beneath her skin, the mark flared brighter, a crescent glow she could no longer suppress. She cried out softly, clutching her chest. Still, no one looked closely enough to see. "I never wanted this," she whispered, tears blurring her vision. "I never asked to be different." Alaric turned away. "That," he said coldly, "is no longer my concern." Guards stepped forward. They did not touch her. They did not need to. Lyra backed away slowly, each step heavier than the last. The iron gates creaked open, revealing the dark forest beyond, vast, silent, waiting. Snow began to fall. She crossed the threshold alone. Behind her, the gates slammed shut. The sound echoed through the valley. Final. Lyra stood there for a moment, the full moon blazing overhead. The silver mark beneath her skin burned brighter now, no longer hidden, no longer patient. She sank to her knees in the snow. "I don't know what I am," she whispered brokenly, "but I know I'm not nothing." The moon answered. Deep in the forest, ancient wolves lifted their heads. And the mark, the moon's mark, awakened fully for the first time. The forest swallowed Lyra whole. The moment the iron gates of Silvercrest slammed shut behind her, the warmth of torchlight vanished, replaced by a cold so sharp it stole the breath from her lungs. Snow drifted steadily from the sky, catching in her hair and melting against her skin before freezing again. She took one step, then another. Each movement felt heavier than the last, as if the ground itself resisted her leaving, or perhaps warned her not to stop. Lyra wrapped her arms around herself, thin cloak useless against the night. The trees loomed tall and dark, their branches creaking softly as the wind passed through them. Every sound seemed louder now, the crunch of snow, the whisper of leaves, the pounding of her own heart. "You don't belong here," fear whispered. But another voice answered quietly. "You belong." She stumbled deeper into the forest, guided by instinct rather than direction. Her feet slipped more than once, sending her crashing into drifts of snow that soaked through her clothes instantly. Cold seeped into her bones, numbing her fingers, her toes, her thoughts. Her chest burned. The mark. Lyra gasped and pressed her hand to her collarbone. Beneath her skin, silver light pulsed in time with the moon overhead, slow, steady, alive. "What are you?" she whispered. The mark warmed in response. Not painfully. Reassuringly. She didn't notice the tracks at first. Only later would she realize they had appeared behind her, large paw prints pressed deep into the snow, circling her path but never crossing it. Watching. Guarding. Lyra slipped again, this time harder. She hit the ground with a cry, snow filling her mouth, her breath knocked painfully from her chest. She lay there for a moment, staring up at the branches overhead. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't go any farther." The forest listened. The wind shifted suddenly, easing just enough for her to breathe. The mark flared brighter, sending a wave of warmth through her chest and down her arms, chasing away the numbness inch by inch. Lyra pushed herself up shakily. The trees ahead seemed to part slightly, revealing a narrow path she hadn't noticed before. Moonlight spilled between the trunks, silver and inviting. Guiding her, she followed it. Minutes blurred into hours. Time lost meaning beneath the weight of exhaustion. Her body screamed for rest, but fear kept her moving, fear of freezing, fear of never waking again. Then she heard it. A low sound. Not the wind. A breath. Her heart stuttered violently. She turned slowly, scanning the darkness between the trees. Nothing. She took another step. The sound came again, closer. A growl. Lyra's breath hitched, panic surged through her, sharp and instinctive. Wolves. She backed away blindly, heel catching on a root hidden beneath the snow. She fell hard, landing on her side, pain shooting through her ribs. Tears spilled freely now, freezing on her cheeks. "I won't fight," she whispered desperately into the night. "Please, I won't fight." Her chest burned fiercely. The mark reacted. Silver light burst beneath her skin, brighter than before, illuminating her faintly in the darkness. The glow spread outward, washing over the snow, the trees, the air itself. The forest went still. The growl faded. Instead, a howl rose, long, resonant, not of hunger or challenge. Recognition. Lyra trembled violently, pressing herself into the snow as shadows moved between the trees. Large shapes stepped into view, their eyes reflecting moonlight, gold, silver, pale blue. They did not rush her. They did not bare their teeth. They stopped. One wolf stepped forward, massive, white-furred, its presence heavy with authority, its eyes fixed on Lyra's glowing chest. The mark answered. The wolf lowered its head. Lyra gasped softly, disbelief washing over her fear. The wolves circled her slowly, forming a loose ring. Their bodies blocked the wind, their warmth easing the bite of cold around her. The white wolf sat directly in front of her, calm and steady. You can see it," Lyra whispered. The wolf's ears flicked. The mark pulsed again. A sense of connection flowed through her, not words, but understanding. These wolves were not drawn to her weakness. They were drawn to her claim. Lyra's strength finally gave out. Exhaustion dragged her down, her body curling inward as darkness crept into the edges of her vision. As she slipped into unconsciousness, the last thing she felt was warmth, and the steady presence of wolves settling around her, guarding the moon's mark as if it were their own. Far behind stone walls and cold judgment, Alpha King Alaric Moonthorn paused abruptly where he stood. His chest tightened. An unease, sharp and unfamiliar, clawed through his bond with the land. He looked up at the full moon, and for the first time doubt stirred. Lyra woke to stillness. Not the frightening stillness of emptiness, but a deep, layered quiet, the kind that existed only when something powerful stood guard. For a moment she lay unmoving, unsure if she was alive or still trapped in a dream shaped by cold and fear. Then she felt warmth. It wrapped around her from every side, steady and living, nothing like the brief comfort of fire. Her fingers twitched, brushing against something thick and coarse. Fur. Her eyes flew open. She lay in the center of a wide circle of wolves. They were arranged with deliberate care, bodies pressed close enough to block the wind, backs dusted with snow, heads lifted in watchful silence. The white wolf from the night before lay directly across from her, its pale eyes fixed on her chest where the mark glowed faintly beneath her skin. They had not left her. They had chosen to stay. Lyra pushed herself up slowly, heart-hammering. Panic flared instinctively, but before she could move further, a low rumble rolled through the circle. Not a growl. A warning. Stay. She froze. The wolves did not bare their teeth. They did not lunge. They simply watched, patient, calm, certain. I won't hurt you, Lyra whispered shakily. I swear. The white wolf tilted its head, studying her. Then slowly, deliberately, it lowered itself into a bow. Every wolf followed. Lyra's breath caught painfully in her throat. Why, she whispered, I don't understand. The mark warmed. Not in pain, in recognition. Silver light spread beneath her skin, tracing delicate lines across her collarbone and down her arms. The glow brightened until the snow around her reflected it, turning the clearing into a pool of moonlight. The forest answered. A soft hum vibrated through the ground beneath her feet, spreading outward like roots waking beneath the soil. Lyra gasped as understanding flowed into her, not as words, but as certainty. The mark was not a curse. It was not a deformity. It was a claim. Long before packs raised walls and crowns, the moon had chosen guardians, those who would listen rather than rule, protect rather than dominate. They were rare, quiet, often mistaken for weak. The moon's mark. Lyra pressed trembling fingers against her glowing skin. I was hiding it, she whispered. I thought it meant something was wrong with me. The white wolf stepped closer, lowering its massive head until its forehead nearly touched hers. Acceptance. The wolves shifted, tightening the circle slightly. Warmth increased, chasing away the last remnants of cold from Lyra's bones. She realized then that they were not merely guarding her. They were guarding the mark. Hunger made itself known next, a deep ache twisting her stomach. She had not eaten since before the judgment. Weakness spread through her limbs as she swayed slightly. The white wolf rose and padded into the trees. Two others followed without sound. Minutes passed. Lyra waited, heart racing, fear flickering that they might not return. But they did. The wolves emerged carrying prey, a deer freshly killed, its scent rich and warm. They laid it gently at the edge of the clearing and stepped back. They waited. You hunted for me, Lyra whispered. Her hands shook as she approached. She had never hunted, never taken life. But the mark pulsed, steady and guiding, easing her fear. She worked clumsily, apologizing under her breath, doing what needed to be done. The wolves did not rush her. They did not judge. When she finished, they dragged the remains away and settled back into their places. Strength returned slowly. With it came awareness. Lyra felt the forest now, every root, every breath of wind, every heartbeat around her. Not as noise, but as connection. She could sense the wolves' emotions, curiosity, loyalty, calm certainty. One wolf limped into the clearing then, its hind leg twisted unnaturally, blood staining the snow. It whined softly, pain clouding its eyes. Lyra's chest tightened. Without thinking, she knelt. "I can help," she whispered. The mark flared. Silver light poured from her hands, warm and controlled, flowing into torn flesh and shattered bone. The wolf cried out once, then went still. Moments later it stood. Whole. The wolves erupted into howls, not of dominance but of recognition. Lyra stared at her hands, tears streaming freely. "I wasn't broken," she whispered. "I was waiting." The moon overhead shone brighter, as if in agreement. And far away, within the stone halls of Silvercrest, Alpha King Alaric Moonthorn woke suddenly from restless sleep, his chest burning with an unfamiliar ache. For the first time since he cast her out, his wolf stirred in unease. Stories never needed permission to travel. They moved through paw prints and whispers, through the restless unease of wolves who could not sleep and scouts who returned with eyes too wide and voices too soft. By the second night after Lyra's banishment, the frostwood no longer felt empty to those who skirted its edge. It felt occupied. A hunter from the eastern ridge came back pale-faced, claiming the trees themselves seemed to watch him. Another swore he heard a chorus of howls, not territorial, not hostile, but layered, organized, as if dozens of packs spoke with one breath. And always there was the same detail. Silver light. At first, Alpha King Alaric Moonthorn dismissed the reports. "Fear makes poets of fools," he said, pacing the council chamber. "Winter breeds hallucinations." Yet his wolf did not settle. It prowled restlessly beneath his skin, unsettled in a way Alaric had not felt since his ascension. The land bond that tied him to Silvercrest tugged strangely toward the forest, not like a threat, but like a warning ignored for too long. That night Alaric dreamed. He stood beneath a moon so bright it burned. A silver crescent glowed in the snow before him, pulsing like a living heart. Wolves knelt in a vast circle, their eyes reflecting something older than kings. At the center stood Lyra. She did not look at him. He woke with a sharp breath, his chest aching as if something had been carved away. Meanwhile, Lyra learned what it meant to be marked. The forest brought her lessons without words. She learned that the moon's mark was rare not because it was powerful, but because it required patience. Those marked were often overlooked, quiet, observant, dismissed, until the moment the world needed balance more than dominance. The wolves brought others to her. Rogues first, scarred, cautious, unused to mercy. They approached the clearing with heads low, eyes alert. When they saw Lyra standing calm beneath the moon, silver light steady beneath her skin, they bowed. Not in fear. In recognition. "I don't rule you," Lyra said softly, hands open. "I listen." They stayed. Soon injured wolves followed, frost-bitten paws, torn flanks, broken ribs from territorial clashes. Lyra healed where she could, resting when the mark dimmed, learning its limits. The power was not endless. It was deliberate. Each act of healing drew the forest closer to her, weaving roots and breath and heartbeat into something whole. By dawn of the third day, packs began to gather. Not armies. Families. Back in Silvercrest, the elders convened in hushed urgency. "The moon's mark has returned," one said, voice trembling. "The old carvings warned of this." "Warned," Alaric snapped, "or promised?" Silence answered him. They brought the stone tablets from the lower vaults, worn, ancient, etched with crescent symbols and kneeling wolves. Alaric stared at the carvings, dread pooling cold in his gut. "When the king casts out the moon's chosen," the inscription read, "the forest will reclaim its voice." Alaric's fists clenched. "She hid it," he said hoarsely. "The mark, she deceived us." The eldest shook her head slowly. "No, she protected you. The mark awakens only when rejected." The truth struck like a blow. Alaric remembered the brief flare of silver beneath Lyra's skin, the moment he had dismissed as nothing, the unease he had ignored. Regret bloomed, slow, painful, undeniable. "She trusted us," he whispered. Outside, the wolves howled again, closer this time. And for the first time since his reign began, Alpha King Alaric Moonthorn feared not losing power, but losing forgiveness. Alpha King Alaric Moonthorn did not take his guard. He did not wear the crown forged from moon silver, nor the ceremonial armor etched with victories. At dawn, when the frost still clung to the earth like a warning, he left Silvercrest alone, wrapped only in a dark cloak and the weight of what he had done. The forest greeted him without welcome. The moment he crossed the boundary stones, the air changed. Sound dampened. The wind died. Even his footsteps seemed swallowed by the ground, as if the land itself had decided he was no longer worth announcing. His wolf paced uneasily beneath his skin. "This place is not ours," it warned. Alaric nodded grimly. He felt it too, a pressure against his chest, not hostile but absolute. The forest did not threaten him. It judged him. He followed the pull he had ignored for too long, not the mate bond which he had severed with cold words, but the deeper tether that connected him to the moon itself. With every step, memories resurfaced. Lyra standing quietly at the edge of gatherings, Lyra lowering her gaze when others mocked her, Lyra flinching not from pain but from attention. He had called that weakness. He reached the clearing just as the sun broke through the canopy. And stopped. Wolves filled it. They were not scattered. They were arranged, shoulder to shoulder, fur brushing fur, forming a living wall that stretched farther than he could see. Alphas, betas, rogues, elders, packs without banners, united without command. They did not snarl. They did not advance. They simply stood. Alaric took one step forward. The wolves moved as one, tightening the line. He stopped. Slowly, deliberately, Alaric dropped to one knee. Snow soaked into his trousers, the cold biting, grounding him in a way power never had. "I was wrong," he said, his voice rough. "I judged what I did not understand." The wolves did not move. From their center, Lyra stepped forward. She wore no crown, no symbols of rule, only a simple cloak, her hair loose, silver light flowing softly beneath her skin. The moon's mark glowed openly now, unhidden, undeniable. She looked calm, not triumphant, not angry, alive. "You cast me out beneath the full moon," Lyra said quietly, her voice carried without effort. "You told the pack I was nothing." Alaric bowed his head lower. "Yes." "You did not ask what I carried," she continued. "You did not listen." Silver light pulsed gently at her collarbone. "The moon did not mark me to rule," Lyra said. "It marked me to remind." The wolves bowed. Alaric's wolf whimpered inside him, not in fear, in recognition. "I do not come to reclaim you," Alaric said hoarsely, "nor to command what I lost. I came to acknowledge my failure." Lyra studied him for a long moment. "You rejected the moon's voice," she said, "and the moon answered anyway." She raised her hand. The wolves parted just enough for him to see the truth. Injured wolves healed, rogues resting without fear, packs mingling without challenge. "Balance. You cannot undo what you did," Lyra said softly, "but you can choose what you do next." Alaric pressed his forehead to the snow. "I choose to kneel," he whispered. And for the first time in generations, an Alpha King bent not to another ruler, but to the moon. Alpha King Alaric Moonthorn returned to Silvercrest at dusk. The gates opened at his approach, iron groaning as if the fortress itself sensed something had changed. Torches flared along the walls, their light casting long, uncertain shadows across the courtyard. Wolves gathered in silence, instinctively aware that the man who walked back through those gates was not the same king who had left. He did not stride. He walked, unarmed, unadorned, human. "Summon the pack," Alaric said quietly. Within the hour, Silvercrest assembled beneath the open sky. Elders took their seats on the stone dais. Warriors lined the courtyard, arms crossed but eyes uneasy. Omegas clustered near the edges, watching with guarded expressions that mirrored the ones Lyra had worn for years. The moon rose. Full again. Alaric stepped forward until he stood where Lyra had once stood, alone, exposed, judged. A murmur rippled through the crowd. "This is not a trial," Alaric said. "It is a confession." Silence fell instantly. "I cast Lyra out," he continued. "Not for treachery, not for crime, but because I mistook quiet for weakness." His voice did not waver. "I did not see the moon's mark," he said, "because I did not look." Gasps spread through the pack. "The moon's mark is real," someone whispered. "Only legends." Alaric raised his hand. "It is real," he said, "and it chose her." The air seemed to tighten. "I rejected the moons chosen beneath a full moon," Alaric continued, each word deliberate. "And in doing so, I rejected balance itself." The elders exchanged grave looks. "She did not deceive us," Alaric said. "She protected us. The mark awakens only when cast out by pride." The truth settled heavily. Outside the walls, howls rose, not aggressive, not challenging, layered and calm. The sound wrapped around Silvercrest like a living tide. "They are gathering," a guard whispered. Alaric nodded. "I know." He turned back to his pack. "I will not command you to kneel," he said, "but I will." And before anyone could speak, the Alpha King of Silvercrest dropped to one knee beneath the moon. Gasps tore through the courtyard. "I failed the moon," Alaric said, "and I failed her." He bowed his head fully. A long moment passed. Then one elder knelt. Then another. Warriors followed, betas, omegas. Not in fear. In recognition. From beyond the gates, the howls grew closer. And Silvercrest understood the moon had not abandoned them. It was coming to be seen. The howls did not fade with the night. They gathered. They layered over one another until the sound became something vast and deliberate, rolling through the valley like a tide guided by the moon itself. Silvercrest had heard wolves all its life, warnings from borders, calls of victory, cries of loss, but never this. This was not a challenge. This was an announcement. Guards rushed to the parapets, torches shaking in their hands as they peered beyond the gates. At first, the forest was only shadow and snow. Then eyes appeared, dozens, then hundreds, reflecting moonlight like scattered stars. Wolves stepped out from between the trees. Not rushing, not snarling. They moved with calm precision, spreading across the clearing outside Silvercrest, forming a living wall of fur and breath. Alphas stood beside rogues, lone wolves beside pack elders. There was no hierarchy visible, only unity. Inside the walls, fear rippled. "They're not attacking," someone whispered. "Then why are they here?" The answer came when the wolves parted. Lyra walked forward. She did not wear finery. She did not carry a blade. Her feet touched snow without leaving prints, moonlight following her like a companion. The moon's mark glowed openly at her collarbone now, a silver crescent pulsing gently, unmistakable. Every wolf bowed as she passed. Not commanded. Chosen. On the walls, Silvercrest stared in stunned silence. "That's her. The marked one." The moon's voice. Lyra stopped just beyond the gates. The wolves halted behind her, stretching back into the forest as far as the eye could see. Alaric stepped forward alone. He did not raise his voice. He did not reach for power. He knelt. The sound of his knee-touching stone echoed louder than any howl. "I see you," he said simply. Lyra met his gaze. "And I see what you did," she replied, not cruelly, not kindly, truthfully. The moon's mark flared brighter. Silvercrest's gates opened slowly. Lyra entered alone. Behind her, the wolves remained outside, waiting. The pack fell to its knees without command. Not from fear, from recognition. "I did not come to rule," Lyra said, her voice carrying through the courtyard like moonlight across water. "I came because the moon does not abandon what is cast aside." She turned slowly, meeting the eyes of Omegas, warriors, elders alike. "You measured strength by noise," she said, "and missed what was listening." The silver light spread softly across the stone beneath her feet. Alaric bowed his head lower. "The moon marked me," Lyra continued, "not to replace kings, but to remind them." She turned back toward the open gates. "I will not stay," she said, "but you will remember." She stepped back into the night. The wolves followed, and Silvercrest understood the Alpha King had cast her out. But the moon had brought her back. They would speak of that night for generations. Not as a war, not as a conquest, but as a remembering. The night the Alpha King cast her out, the moon had marked her, quietly, patiently, waiting for the world to notice what it had nearly lost. And when the world failed, the forest answered. Lyra did not remain at Silvercrest. She did not take a throne, nor demand loyalty from those who had once turned away. Power, she learned, did not need to occupy stone halls to exist. It moved with roots and breath, with listening and restraint. She returned to the forest. Wolves followed. They gathered not because she commanded them, but because the moon's mark restored something ancient they had forgotten: balance. Packs began to change. Alphas ruled with less roar and more care. Omegas were no longer dismissed for silence. Healers were valued. Listeners were protected. When disputes rose, wolves would look toward the trees before drawing claws. And often peace followed. Alaric Moonthorn ruled differently after that. He kept the crown, but not the arrogance. Each full moon, he stood alone at the gates of Silvercrest and bowed his head, not in shame, but in respect. He never again judged what he did not understand. The elders rewrote their laws. Not because Lyra demanded it. Because the moon had. As for Lyra, stories followed her wherever wolves roamed. A silver-marked woman walking barefoot through snow, wolves at her side. A healer whose touch mended bone and quieted rage. A presence that calmed storms before they broke. Some said she vanished into moonlight itself, becoming something more than wolf, more than queen. Others swore she still walked the deep forests, listening, guiding, reminding. But every story ended the same way. With this truth, the Alpha King cast her out. He did not know the moon had marked her. And when the moon marks you, the world must listen.